Hi, welcome back. In this video I propose we learn something about France and about French culture thanks to Eurodisney, otherwise known as Disneyland Paris. And if you don't have much time to waste, I'll say up front that I don't quite know where I'm going with this. I'll try to include cultural facts about France and about the French language within the general theme of Eurodisney. The idea started yesterday, in fact. A student told me about her trips to Disney near San Diego in California and mentioned that she once went to Disneyland Paris, and she mentioned, among other things, the frozen waterfalls or the fountains, I think it was, and said, why the bloody hell did they put it in Paris? Wouldn't you not want it in Spain or somewhere it's hot? But being American, she probably didn't say bloody, but she said something similar. Why the bloody hell would you put it in Paris and not somewhere it's hot? Like Spain, which I thought was a good point to make. And it got me thinking. I thought, yes, it is a funny idea actually. Why put Disneyland in Paris? And it brought me back to when I initially heard about the grand opening of Disneyland Paris. I was in school at the time, and the first thing you ever heard about Disneyland Paris was how expensive it was. And we were talking about hundreds of euros even then. And that was the 90s. Or maybe it wasn't yet the euros, anyway I can't remember. But it was hundreds of units of money. It might have been euros, I don't know. And I must admit that I since forgotten about the existence of Eurodisney. I haven't been thinking about it much lately. I would have expected it to close actually. I thought it would have been closed by now, shut down. I thought it was a short-term project, Disneyland in Paris, but I hadn't realised it was still a thing. But anyway, let's start with the basics. If you've never heard of Disney before, because you're so busy studying French and doing other worthwhile things, it's a series of cartoons created by one Walt Disney in the 1940s, I think it was, and the main character is a mouse, and he has these big black ears, and he smiles a lot, and people think it's absolutely wonderful. And he has a best friend, who's a duck, and who's called Donald. The duck doesn't wear any trousers, just a t-shirt, hence the expression Donald ducking it. For example, after moments of romance in the marital bed, when you can never seem to find your underwear, and you put your t-shirt on first and walk around the bed looking for your undergarments, in this moment you're technically Donald ducking it. This can happen in the kitchen also. You might see one morning your partner half asleep in front of the coffee machine in a daze, and you look down and you say, haven't you forgotten something? The interesting thing about it is that you can't do this in French. The French language doesn't work the same way that English does. So we can't just turn any word into a verb as we can in English. We can't say, I MacGyvered my way out of it. And as you can tell, it's been a while since I watched any television. But French is not that type of language, and French is a lot more rigid, and a word is a word and a tense is a tense, which actually makes it a delight to teach and to learn, I believe, because despite what many French YouTubers say, it's a very, very logical and structured language, contrary to English that suffers from a complete absence of norm. Now, proof of this might be the very existence of one Winnie the Pooh, who also enjoys to Donald duck it on occasion. This sort of thing could never have been allowed to slide in French. You're calling your character what? The Pooh? Is this supposed to be funny? That's the reaction you'd get in French, but in English it works, and I think we can tell that there's a certain vagueness to English that allows this sort of thing to happen. We see it in words, but also in tenses, and you can misuse tenses and no one cares in English. For example, this is not a tense, but it's an example with a noun. Instead of referring to the speed of the car, for example, we can say the fast stability of my car, and it's all right. I mean, no one beats an eyelid. It's just a different language, but in French a word is a word, and in English it's the fast stability, the courageness, I don't know, it all works in English. It's a lot more elastic, but French is a lot more structured. So in French you can't just call a children's character a Pooh. It wouldn't work. So after these highbrow linguistic considerations, I'll move on with my video. Because I didn't know that Eurodisney was still open, I went to see the reviews on Google, especially the bad ones. And it seems that the top complaints at Eurodisney, call it Disneyland Paris, I call it Eurodisney, it seems that the top complaints were long queues, broken down rides, the fact of selling more tickets than the park could manage, or that they more tickets than they could actually accommodate visitors, the price of food, the lack of maintenance of some areas, not all the areas, some areas, and the unhelpful staff. And I have to mention this, in the reviews, one person, you can check for yourself, it's up there on, it's on Google Reviews, one person mentioned they spent over $7,000 or euros over 4 days there, 7,000. And they left a bit disappointed. I'm thinking, do you know how many languages you can learn with $7,000? I'll make you bilingual 3 times over with $7,000. It's fascinating to me, the different financial priorities. I don't know. It's is that a word? It's flabbergasting. I am flabbergasted by these types of financial priorities. I think that the average person who goes to Disneyland goes there to find magic, a day out of wonder and surprise, and, well, the only problem with that is, okay, but you're in France. And if this contradiction isn't apparent to you, I'll explain. France, the country of philosophy, education, social realism, hosting a magical place based on staged happiness and exuberance. Are you having a laugh? I was too young at the time to be called to speak at the original investors meeting when they planned this thing, this Euro Disney thing, but I think I would have pointed out, firstly, grey sky and rain all the bloody time. And according to Statista, which is a reputable statistics website, Paris had 171 days of rain in 2024. That's 1 every 2 days. Does this seem like the place you would want to put Disneyland in? I found a review on Trustpilot, which I'm going to read because I find it quite telling. It says, regrettably, a number of employees we approached for assistance responded curtly and without the trademark warmth that defines Disney service. That's what the review on Trustpilot says. Okay, this is France. One of my first questions would be, I'm speaking to the Disneyland owners, who are you going to hire to work at your Disney park? Only 10% of the 25 to 34 age group in France don't have a postgraduate degree. So in other words, it's an unusual thing not to have a postgraduate education when you finish high school. This leaves us with 2 options. A, employed staff within the 10%, which, by the way, you would have to come from extremely unfavorable social conditions in France to be in that 10%. You really would. And I'm not saying this out of snobbishness, snobbability. Snobbishness. It's just a fact. You would have to come from extremely unfavorable social conditions to be within this 10%, or have philosophical convictions that prevented you from going to college/university. Or the other choice, second choice, you would have to employ ridiculously overqualified people to run the rides. And knowing what I know about France, I wouldn't be surprised if the kids that manage the rides all have master's degrees in philosophy or fine arts. Because here's another thing. In France and in Europe, they say that the master's is now the new bachelor's and the PhD is the new master's. There's a complete devaluation of the university qualifications. And it's not like in England or the US where a master's actually means something. You know, it's an impressive degree. Okay, this is Europe. All these diplomas have been devalued. So I want to say, well, yes, of course they can't manage the queues. They're not interested and they don't even see the problem. You have a degree in something, whatever it is, a bachelor's or a master's. Well, of course you can't manage queues at a ride. You don't even see the problem. It's not even on your spectrum, you see. So the next thing I'd like to talk about is the recurring bad service I see in reviews. That has to do, well, partly with the level of education in France, but mostly with a very, very big difference in work culture. In most of Europe, a person remains themselves in their place of work and they don't play a role. So the term professionalism doesn't apply. It's a very, very big difference with the UK and maybe Japan, I don't know, or countries like Japan, or of which I'm told that they have very high standards of professionalism. But Europe isn't like that. You remain your own person at your place of work. You see, it's very different from the States and certainly from the UK. So if a worker woke up, it's hard to say. So if a worker woke up on the wrong side of the bed, that's what you're getting in Europe. And in the UK especially, I've always considered workers to be highly, highly professional. I think it's a quality about the UK that's very undervalued. I think they know how to play the professional game and give service. It's just the thing they can do. It's the work culture. I would say that in America it's mostly true, but not entirely. Now, according to me, if the UK scores 90% in customer service, I'd give a 75% to the USA. But in Europe, how can you score it? I'd say 50% at the most, because it's a toss-up. It's a complete toss-up. It depends who you speak to, because there's no pressure to be anything else than you are in Europe when you work. And the reason people don't know this about Europe, and Europeans don't know this about themselves, is because, well, no one realizes that they're doing it. It's not a thing they talk about. You know, you don't sort of talk to your colleague in Europe. Isn't it nice to be ourselves at work and not to not care and not have to play the professional game? So foreigners coming over to Europe will probably think it's an isolated case and that the worker was a bit disgruntled on that day, but no, I could make multiple videos on this. And if you don't believe me, you don't have to, of course. I'm merely speaking of 40 years experience, but you don't have to believe me. My take on it is that strong work unions and tradition, also cultural tradition, has allowed workers to not care much, really. The bad service you encounter at Eurodisney, and this is my point, that the bad service you encounter at Eurodisney or elsewhere wasn't an accident. The worker just wasn't in the mood. Now, all of this comes as somewhat of a problem in a magical place where you're meant to go above and beyond and dazzle people with magic. It's not exactly in the culture. This isn't Florida or San Diego, it's France. So you can't just tell a French person, listen, you're going to smile all day like a pillar box and you're going to enchant people, you're going to give 110%. What? No, I'm not. I'm not. I think for that sort of thing, you might as well employ someone from North Korea to work at Disney. It's just not that sort of place. It's France. It's not in the culture. Now, going back to Trustpilot, this same person wrote, I'll read, absence of character, meet and greet. Now, this is important. Absence of character, meet and greet. And I saw several reviews that mentioned this. You couldn't find the characters. And they say, one of the highlights my children had anticipated most was meeting their favourite Disney characters for photos. Throughout the day, no official meet and greet opportunities were available, and roaming characters were noticeably absent. Why am I not surprised? I'll tell you why, and you can find this on Trustpilot. So there are two problems here that the visitor to the park didn't know of. First of all, the French don't speak English. And second, it's not in their culture, even if they did speak English. So even French people with a bachelor's degree or a master's degree rarely get past B1 level in English. And I'm not saying this because I think that people with academic diplomas are more clever. It's just that usually that's where you study English at a high level, because it's really not in high school that it's going to happen, let's be frank. And you can check this for yourself. Just look up on YouTube people in diplomatic positions who are French and who speak English. I mean, they sometimes crack B1 level, rarely B2, and I'd say never C1. So that's just France. That's the way it works. But they certainly don't know the French. I mean, they certainly don't know the rules of phonetics or of intonation of English. So who's going to do the job of greeting kids in English? You know? So what I mean to say is, if you go through normal high school in France, you might end up with a level of English that, if they have the teachers, by the way, because it's not even a guarantee anymore, but they might end up with a level of English in the best of cases, maybe A2, sorry, maybe B1, but it's going to be hello. How are you? I'm happy to see you. Now, in the best cases, if you've really studied English in a sustained way for 5 years, and you have a master's, maybe you'll have a B2 level. But then, even if you did have that level, you still don't know English phonetics, and you still don't know the rules of intonation to put life into your meet and greet. This is my point. You can't say, oh, where are you from? Oh, come on, sure. I don't know what they say, but that's just probably what I would say. Hi, how are you? What's your name? Okay, let's get ready for the photo. Okay, everyone ready? Say cheese. That's a skill in itself. You don't learn that in school, and certainly not at university, you see. So my point is, well, who would do the job? Who? So to wrap up this video, you can check for yourself the reviews on Trustpilot and on Google. It's mostly the same thing that's recurring. Comes back: queues, service, the price, broken rides, poor food. But I feel that knowing what I know about France as an insider, and I mentioned we're talking about 40 years here, I don't see how Disney could sort this problem even if they wanted to. Because of the level of education in France, because of the way of thinking also, the place of wonder and amazement within their culture, placing a place of wonder and amazement within the French social, realistic and philosophical culture, the professional behavior also, which you find in Europe. And I almost want to say, unless you import Americans to work there in France, I don't see how they can sort it. But anyway, I'm glad to know it's still going well for Disney. It seems packed to the rafters 30 years after they opened. Luckily for them, I think the size of the brand, of the Disney brand, is beyond any sort of bad reviews at this stage. So it's with a clear heart that I post my little video, my little drop in the ocean. I have nothing against Disney. I think it's wonderful entertainment. Before I forget, I should mention Porky Pig, who's also been known to Donald Duck it, and who regularly appears in public with a little bow tie. Okay, better stop before it gets weird. I'm Chris from We Communicate. See you soon.